We are live and recording! Yay! Thank you
Yay!
so much! So, thank you everyone for your patience. We had technical difficulties, which is to be expected when you have such magical books in your presence, because as we all know, magic and technology do not always like to mix. But a huge shout out to Alex for joining us tonight.
Yay, Alex!
Yay! And she's going to be in conversation with Marie Lu. And just to give you a little introduction, Alex is an author and graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, where she majored in English with a concentration in creative writing. The Emblem Island series is inspired by Latin American myths her Colombian grandmother told her as a child before bedtime, which I think is amazing. I have a couple friends, like Latin American, families, your stories can be really scary sometimes, even for the children. So I'm like, oh my gosh, so many amazing things are going to be popping up in these stories for you guys to get to see. And Marie is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Legend trilogy, the Young Elites trilogy, and also I have seen many of you in the chats mentioning the Steel Striker, which is coming out soon. So yeah, the Sky Hunter duology and many more. And today we are celebrating, drumroll please, Curse of the Forgotten City, which you must say in a dramatic voice. You have no other option. And it is book 2 for Curse of the Night Witch. It is the follow-up. And I'm not going to give too much away since we've done the intro, and I'm sure you guys are excited to hear our author speak. But a little house rules. To the right-hand side, as many of you have seen, thank you for all of the love in the comment section. Keep it coming.
Yes.
That is our general chat. And then also, I'm sure you guys have lots of questions for our authors. So if you do have those questions, make sure you put them in the Ask a Question section down below, as it would imply. If you click that button, you can submit a question. I do encourage you to vote on questions. You can vote questions up. So if you see one and you're like, oh, this is imperative, it must be answered, then instead of writing it twice, just vote it up. And then most importantly, you may be wondering, how can I procure these amazing, magical books that I must need and consume? And if you look down below, there is a purchase book button, and you can get a signed book plate from Alex. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass you guys off to Marie and Alex. Have a phenomenal event, and I will see you guys at the end. Bye!
Bye. Thank you so much for the intro. Alex, I am so excited to talk to you today. Welcome everyone to the event. We have so much to talk about. First of all, congratulations on both of your books in the Emblem Island series. I think that you have accomplished so much already, and you are so young and you are so talented. I have so many questions for you, but I just wanted to say a huge congratulations to you on having done so much and accomplished so much already, and you are just beginning.
Thank you so much. I want to take that and have that be a blurb on me. The book's just Marie Lu thinks I've accomplished so much. Thank you so much. Coming from you, honestly, I can easily say that your books were the reason why I ever wanted to start writing.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
That is so cheesy, kind. But it's true. And then rereading them now as an author, I'm just blown away by the craft. And so I have so many questions for you too, because you not only have one successful series, you have several, and that longevity is something that's really rare in any industry, especially publishing. So it means the world to me to be talking to you right now, and thank you so much. And thank you everyone that's joining right now. Thank you Mysterious Galaxy for hosting. This is absolutely amazing. I could not be more excited for this chat.
Yeah, me too. Okay, well, I am going to jump right in. First, I guess, tell us a little bit about Emblem Island and how it started. I know it's inspired by Colombian folklore, and I'm so curious to hear more about that and the origins of this amazing story, because it is truly one of the most lush and original middle grades that I've read in a long time.
Thank you so much. So Emblem Island, the series, is based off of some cuentos or stories that my grandma used to tell me when I was growing up. And so she's this very vivacious, 4'8" tall woman. She's so cute. I was just with her. And so she's so cute, and she used to tell us these stories. And it's so funny. Before it was mentioned that Latinx myths can be really dark, and that's 100% true. It's kind of like the Grimm tales, but they haven't been watered down. And so they're very much like cautionary tales, like if this happens, this will happen. And I feel like maybe hundreds of years ago, they really did play a role of like, don't go down the wrong way, or like you'll get eaten by a wolf. And like maybe that was like somewhat applicable, but they have not been watered down. But one of my favorite ones that was kind of more of a traditional story was about a girl with a star on her forehead, and she earned the star because she followed the rules, and her sister broke the rules and she earned horns on her head. So just, I know.
Wow,
So
I love it.
I love the idea of like having a star on your forehead. First of all, I would love a star on my forehead, and every time the bad sister tried to scratch it off, it got brighter and more pretty, and I definitely wanted the star. But I also was so obsessed with the idea of having markings on your skin that you either earn or you're born with. So that inspired the whole world of Emblem Island. But the first book is set obviously on Emblem Island, where everyone's born with markings on their skin that represent their fate and their talent. So everyone has a lifeline across their palm, and that shows if they're going to have a long life, if they're going to have a short life, an adventurous life, or a really boring life. And the main character, Tor Luna, hates the markings that he was born with. He has a really boring lifeline, and he's also a born leader like his mother, but he does not want to lead anyone. And so he wants a different emblem, so he makes a wish during the New Year's Eve celebration where everyone can make a wish in the hopes of it being granted in the new year. Instead of his wish being granted, he wakes up the next morning and he has been cursed. And the only way that he can break the deadly curse is to go with his two best friends across Emblem Island for the first time in search of the Night Witch, who is the only person who can break the curse. And so they have to follow these ancient legends to find her. And we actually put those legends in between the chapters. So it's kind of like a book within a book. And that's definitely my favorite part. And so the first book takes place on Emblem Island. So you get to meet all the different like subcultures and the different creatures that live on Emblem Island. And the second book, Curse of the Forgotten City, is all about the sea around Emblem Island. So it's an entirely new world, and we also have a book of legends that they have to follow to find what they're looking for in the second book, and those are also in between the chapters, but they're like sea myths. So that's the gist of Emblem Island.
I love it so much, and it all makes so much sense as I'm hearing you tell me more about the folklore that inspired it. I can see that inspiration. I can see like the darkness in the story, and you know the curses that happen to you if you don't follow the right rules. And I wanted to ask you about this world building, because the first thing that I noticed when I read your book is that this is Curse of the Night Witch, and then Curse of the Forgotten City, is that you're able to blend in your world building without slowing the story down. And that is not easy to do, especially in a debut. And I was so impressed with that. You are thrown right into the story. Like in the first book, you jump right into telling us about the lifelines and the way that Tor Luna is talking about it makes me believe that he is telling us this from a point of view of like, oh, he already knows all of this stuff. We don't know it, but you are able to tell us without it being this giant info dump. So sorry, this is like building up the question, I promise. I just thought it was great. And so I'm curious, how do you go about building out this fascinating world and making it so vivid and so lush? Do you visualize things as a movie in your head? Do you see it as a movie and then you write it down? Do you outline? How does that process work for you?
First of all, thank you so much. That's so kind of you to say. And it's almost funny because that's something that I really admire about your writing, and something that I definitely learned from reading your books is the fact that your plotting and your pacing is just like you're rushing to keep up. You don't have anything. I know, like as an author, you now read things and you're like, oh, I would have cut this paragraph, or like this is moving a little slowly, and your pacing is just phenomenal. So like, thank you so much. I learned it from you. It's so incredible.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, I think that was really important for me. I think I'm the type of writer, I studied creative writing in college, and the only thing that I've really learned from college, I don't think that you need to go to like some fancy university like to become a writer. I think like the best practice is just writing a bunch of manuscripts, deleting a bunch of words, and just trying again and again. So this, although it is my debut, it's my 6th book that I wrote. So if you were reading like the first book I ever wrote when I was 12, it was absolutely terrible. And so no one should ever read it. But one of the only things that I really got from my college creative writing classes was I had a teacher that said, like, any type of like flowery language or descriptions would just kind of just like weight on the words. And although I love descriptions and like I really admire writers that can do that very well, I kind of just learned to just kind of get to the point and like keep it moving. So I think my first drafts are always way too short. So I wrote the first Emblem Island book in like a month. And
wow.
But as you know, it's not like I just wrote it and that's what people are reading right now. Like it's been like, so the first book that I wrote, like the first draft was like 40,000 words. So almost half what it ended up being. And so I think like instead of overwriting, I definitely underwrite because I'm impatient. I need to get to the next thing. So I think that really like led to the like fast-paced nature and me not really describing things as much. And I do think I see it as a movie, but almost in a bad way. I see it as a movie only I can see. So I just don't explain enough stuff. So I really have to go back and be like, oh, no one else is in my head right now. Like I'm the only one who knows what's going on. Let me like actually describe the world. And so I think maybe that's where I hit a good balance between like not over describing because I truly do under describe, and then my editor's like, we literally have no idea what this looks like. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go back and I add it. But I just think like for me, that's not my strong suit, like describing things. I'm more like a plot person. And I like world building more in theory instead of like actually visualizing it and saying, this is exactly what it looks like. So I think that's probably how I do it. It's more just like kind of an adding and subtracting process versus just like me like intentionally doing it right the first time.
Right. That's actually really similar to how I do my beginning work too. I tend to do just enough world building where I'm like, okay, I got it. I can start writing a draft, and I just kind of jump in, and then the rest of it falls into place as I'm drafting. So it sounds like you do something similar. And I actually honestly am so surprised that you said that description is not your strong suit, because I thought that was one of the most gorgeous things in the book was your descriptions. They are so vivid, and I'm very drawn to visual books, and I thought your book was incredibly vivid and beautifully described. So
thank you.
It was so well done. And so I wanted to ask a little bit about, this is the first book. This is such a story about fate and the ability to fight against it or choose something else, and the ramifications of that. I'm curious about that, because it's such a strong theme, and I feel like we all write our stories for something, of course, for entertainment. But I'm curious, do you have strong beliefs around fate? Do you believe that we kind of are set to, do a certain thing, or are we set on a certain path, or you more believe in pushing against it? I'm really curious about this theme.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I think I do feel like we can do whatever we want because my passion is writing, and since I was 12, I always wanted to be a writer. I think some people see me and they're like, oh, you're young and you have these book deals, like you must be some sort of like prodigy, and 100% I'm not. I really was like the worst reader in my class, the worst. Like I used to see people reading Harry Potter. I was like, I can't read that. And I was telling my cousin recently, because he's 9 and he's like kind of going through a similar phase where I would see people reading these books and I would read something and not understand it at all. Even going into college, like I would read poetry and stuff and just not understand it. And then I ended up like graduating with a degree in English, and I just think like you can really do anything you want as long as you practice and you don't give up. Like I just had to read hundreds of books and then suddenly I'm a good reader. And so I do think that fate is fluid and you can do whatever you want, because I don't like the idea of just like, oh, if you're naturally born gifted at something, that's your path. Like I ended up going to like a prestigious college, not again because like I'm like a genius. I had to stay up until like 4 o'clock in the morning and do tests and read, where some of my classmates like literally would do something in an hour that took me such a long time to do. Like I really, my brain does not work well with math and science. And I would just have to memorize things, and I truly did not understand it. Like maybe my parents watching this would be like, why did we like pay for college? Because I really truly, writing is the only thing that not only I love, but I felt like I was good at after a while. So I think my view on fate truly is like maybe a little bit like Tor, that the gifts that you're born with are amazing, but you shouldn't necessarily, like, if you're really really good at something but you don't like it, I'm definitely on team like, then do something else. And even if it's harder, like yeah. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this too, like on what you think about fate.
Oh, it's 100% what you just said. I thought that was such a wonderful, wonderful answer, and means so much, I think, to all of the younger members of our audience who are still finding themselves, and actually people of all ages who are still finding ourselves, still reinventing ourselves, that you are not locked into something that people expect you to be, or that you are somehow given this set of cards and that is just your life. So I really admire that you said that, and that really it is, you got to the places where you are through hard work, and I can see that theme playing out in your book, and it's such a wonderful theme to have, and resonates so well. That was a great answer. And your character, speaking of characters and Tor, they have such vivid voices, and this is also a story about friendship. There's these three friends who I loved reading about. I had a soft spot for Melda, so I'm curious. No wonder. I loved her, and I was curious, did you have a favorite character to write? Was there one that you felt the most natural towards? Was it Melda because she is the most like you? And also, was there a character that was more challenging for you to access and to get into their headspace for?
I say Melda is me because she really is, I guess, or was, because as a kid I was really like, I followed the rules, I tried to do the right thing, I tried to like be what everyone wanted me to be, like try to be a good student, and that probably played into a lot of the reason why like I just did not sleep in high school, not necessarily because I wanted to go to like this college, but because I just felt like if I'm given this opportunity, I have to like at least like I should stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning and do it. And I feel like that's Melda's entire life, is like she has these brothers who need help, and her mother's like overworked, and so she feels an obligation to fulfill the void, but not just an obligation, like that fulfills her entire like identity. And so I definitely feel closest to Melda, but I feel like also because she is so similar to how I was, it was also really hard to write her, because I feel like we're most critical of the people that we are like, and so I would just judge her decisions and like her voice so much harder than I would the other ones, because I feel like it's just like kind of a reflection of myself. So whenever she like didn't want to go on the adventure or would do something like that, truly I feel like I would even be like, oh, Melda, and then I realized like towards the end, that's you. You can't judge her. So I think Tor was also hard to write because he's just so not like me. I like to say like maybe my little cousin's watching. His name's John Carlos, and I dedicated the book to him, my other cousin Luna, and my grandma, the 4'8" grandma. And so he's most like Tor because he's just so unlike me, that like Tor is like pretty relaxed, like doesn't have like as much anxiety as Melda, and he's just like so simple in the way of like, he's like, I don't want this emblem, so I'll wish for a new one. Whereas like Melda would be like, I don't want this emblem, but like I have to because it's my role in society. Right. And so it was a little hard to write Tor at times because I just do not identify with that at all. Like just I would never do, like I take the risk of making a wish, or like take the risk of like not telling my mom, like who's also has the same emblem, that I'm gonna do this. And then Angle was really fun to write because he's like very adventurous, and he doesn't take himself too seriously, and he would just like, he goes with the flow. And so he definitely was fun to write because he was just like so far from me, but also not hard because I feel like I was writing like a friend I wish that I had like a carefree friend, and a friend that I feel like a lot of us have when we're growing up, like this friend that's like, just, it seems like they don't have like a frontal lobe, like where they're like, hey, like if I like fall from this like 200-foot thing, probably not going to be great. And then Angel's just like, well, it's fun. I mean, well, actually, one of the questions we got on the Instagram sticker was your favorite character from Legend, which is, first of all, probably like the number one question you get. Second of all, probably something that's like really hard to answer. So I would maybe want to edit it and be like, who was the easiest character to write between the two voices that are in Legend?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love hearing that about Torluna and Ingle and Melvin, because their personalities just work so well together as a team. I think that's part of the fun of discovering these characters is finding the foils for them, and that's what Day and June were in Legend.
Yeah.
They were. Day was first. He was always the first character that I had thought of, and he was actually in a thankfully unpublished draft of a book that I'd written in high school as well, and it just never worked. But he was like the only thing I liked about that book. And I just needed to find the right foil for him.
Yeah.
And so June came out of that. And I loved writing June, but she was so hard to write because she, you know, like for you and Torluna, she is very unlike me. It's like she is very left-brained. I am not. You know, she counts everything and she is a genius and I am not.
Yeah.
And Day came very naturally to me. He was always this snarky guy who lived in my head, and I just never had a problem writing him down for whatever reason. He kind of felt like a buddy in my head, which, you know, anyway. But June was just like, I struggled and struggled finding her voice and trying to understand what made her tick and why she made decisions the way she did, because she's so logical. The only thing that June and I had in common was how obtuse we are when it comes to romance or realizing it when it's right in front of your face. Like that I totally gave June from me. But I had a lot of fun writing Day. I had a lot of fun with him. But June, I am really proud of writing, if that makes sense, just because she took a lot of work. But I'm really, really proud of my girl. So.
I mentioned before that I had reread Legend like now years later, and again, as an author and like doing this like as my job, like you look at different things. It's not just like you're reading to enjoy it as much as you would like to. Like you're kind of like, you're just like going through and you're noting like, oh, I see what they're doing here. Like, oh my gosh, how did they do that? And I was just like so blown away. First of all, by your plotting, it's just so perfectly plotted. It doesn't lag. You don't have the dreaded like sagging, like center middle, sagging middle, and you also just. It's such a tightly written like cat and mouse, especially in the beginning, like someone looking and then they don't know. And then I feel like there's so many moments where I read a book and I'm like, okay, the audience definitely knows like this is Day, you know? And so, but you so quickly are like, June is like, or yeah, it's probably hit. Like he, you know, like you are so intuitive, and I feel like it's so hard because you're obviously like when you're the author, you're just in the book, and it's really hard to be like above it and being like, oh, the audience is going to be really annoyed if June is like, just like clueless that this might be, you know, Day, because clearly like. She's so smart. Obviously, she would be like, at least from the beginning, like, I wonder if this is him. And she is. And so that's so perfect. So how was that your first, did the first draft, was it like that? Or is it something, because I know for Curse of the Night Witch, the first draft of the book didn't have the cuentos in the middle of the chapters, in between the chapters,
interesting.
Which I feel like is such a defining like part of the book. And actually there were only like 3 and they were just embedded in the text. And my editor was like, why don't you just add a bunch and put them in between the chapters? So it's like, that's genius. And that really like unlocked a lot of creativity. And I added a lot of new creatures and like places that they go in Emblem Island. So I'm wondering like what the first version of Legend looked like.
Oh, that is so interesting about adding it in between. I wouldn't have guessed that. It felt like it flowed so smoothly. The first draft of Legend was I wrote it relatively quickly for me. It took me about 4 months or so to write that first draft. And I remember rewriting about a third of it. The original version of Legend, Day was much colder of a character. He was a stone cold killer. He was, not as nice as he is in the final version. And June similarly was more emotional of a character. And I think I was just kind of trying to figure out their personalities. And my agent was the one who was at the time helping me figure out why certain parts weren't melding correctly, and why, maybe like June should be realizing things at a different time, or June should be, reacting this way. And so I must have rewritten a good third of that book, just to find that right pace for both of them, and to find that right voice. So it's like you said, a lot of the book is discovering it in revision. We write the version that we think is just complete. The quantity over quality is what I always say.
Yeah.
You just get it out of your head, and then all the hard work really happens in the revisions that come after. So that was it for me. And I wanted to ask you a little bit something about Forgotten City, because that's the one that's coming out so soon. This is your sequel or sophomore book, but it's coming pretty closely on the heels of your first one, and I think that's so smart to do. But it must have been intense writing these two books back to back. So I'm curious what the differences were for you in approaching the second book versus the first, or maybe it was a smooth transition because they were coming so close together, and what it felt like to explore this new chapter for these three heroes.
Yeah, so Curse of the Night Witch actually originally came out last year, but it came out in the pandemic, and it came out during a time when all of the bookstores were basically closed, and so if any, maybe they had one copy, and so it was very largely undiscovered until a month ago. And so I'm actually really happy, because you're right, it does seem like very fortuitous that it's being discovered right now, and it does kind of have a cliffhanger ending, so people don't have to wait a year. They can just buy it, hopefully, and it comes out June 8th. And I do think that they make a good pairing. Like, if you haven't read either of them, hopefully you will finish the first one and just be like, just want to launch yourself directly into the second one, because it's not like a year apart in the timing. It literally, the second one starts as soon as the first one ends, so they could almost be like stuck together as a book. But the process was actually pretty similar, and a little bit unintentionally, because I misread my contract, and so I didn't know that by the time that my book was due, I had not started writing it. And so I really hope my editor is in this job, but she probably knows. And so again, I had to write the second book in like a month.
Oh my God.
It seems, first of all, although it is like 330 pages, both of them, it also is not as long as like most YA books. So it's not like comparable. Like, now writing like a new series, like it's literally like the first book is double. Like, so I'm always like, oh, I can write in a month, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how different it is when it's longer. But I also did not sleep and like lived off of banana bread and like woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But I do think that process, at least for these books, I don't think it's applicable for other books, but because it's a quest narrative, it's not like obviously like your books, especially Legend, like going back and forth, you have to have such a tight understanding of the narrative. Maybe you did, but I would find it impossible to just write it like linearly, like just kind of in a fever dream. I would not be able to do that, because there would be so many holes in the plot. But at least for like Curse of the Night Witch and Curse of the Forgotten City, because it's a quest, I really could write it in like just kind of one swoop without having to go back and be like, oh, there's a plot hole. And if anything, I just added like more stops on their journey. So I actually really liked the way I wrote the first two books, because since it was so quick, I really had to wait until the moment where like the characters were basically like, hello, like talking in my head. And I say this and it sounds insane, but when I was writing, especially the second book, it was almost like I was typing and I couldn't type fast enough. And it was almost like I was surprised, like a witness to what these characters were doing. Like, I'd be like, Engel's doing what? Like, what? Wait, why are they making these decisions? And I like fully realized, it's like, Alex, you're the one typing. There's no one else. But it truly felt like, and I'm wondering if you've had that experience too. Once you have these characters and they're fully fleshed in your head, it really does feel like they're the ones that have the you're the puppet and they're the ones kind of pulling the strings, like, no, we're going to do this. Like, you thought you were going to write this, but no, we kind of want to do this. And so it was just like the best experience ever. Very stressful, like probably took 10 years off of my life, but also so amazing because every day that I was like basically not sleeping and doing this for a month, I truly felt like I was on the journey too. And I'm proud to say that most of the stuff that I wrote in like the first drafts is in there. It's more just like added stuff. So I feel like my process is more, if I try to force myself to write every single day for hours, it just, most of it I'll have to throw away. I have to really be in not just the mood, but the mindset of being just like sit down and I'm ready. And then I just go into a flow where I don't stop. And luckily, almost everything is like keepable. But I'm curious about your process because I only have 2 books out now. The second one's coming out. You have so many that have done so well, and you're also, I'm sure, contracted for many more books. So what's the difference between like your first book when you're writing it without the agent and the publishing house and like the publishing kind of machine, and now where you probably have deadlines and it's more of a science?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I have definitely had that experience of when the characters are just kind of taking a life of their own. And that's honestly the best experience in the world. Is that's when you've made strong enough characters that they are just leaping off the page and doing what they want to do, regardless of what you want them to do. That's always a good feeling. And for me, I really, there is something about that early experience of writing truly in a cave where no one knows about your book or your characters or have expectations of what's coming out. That is kind of magical. And it's hard to say that for anyone who is an aspiring writer, because at that moment, all I wanted was to be under contract, And now that I am, this is of course like a good problem to have, but now I had to relearn how to love writing. If that makes sense, to do what you love to do as a profession is a really weird place to be, especially in the creative fields. And I'm sure I'm curious what your experiences have been too. But it's you are selling a piece of your soul essentially, and that's always kind of weird. And I had to learn how to deal with that in order to protect my creativity. And it's something that I kind of relearn with every new contract, every new book series. And, as life goes on and as I experience new things, I have to reteach myself constantly. What is it that I love about writing? What is it that I love about story? To always try to get myself back to that magical moment, when you were when nobody knew who I was and nobody was expecting any books. And so I think that's that's something that I try to protect, that little piece of me that's still, is really hungry and really, looking for that story. And I think that for creative people, just never let that piece of you die out, because that is the engine that powers all of your creativity. And I don't want to, take up too much of our time. I know that there's probably questions coming in from our readers, so I'm going to open it up to reader questions. And I actually had one more question for you about but let me get to some of the reader questions because I don't want them to miss out. And now I don't know how to. Oh God, I've pushed a button and a thing has happened. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's a question. This was my question. Someone is asking about Lark. So you have this huge new deal. This is your upcoming series, Lark. They're asking, when will Lark be released? And if you can tell us a little bit about Lark and what you have planned for next.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you so much for asking about it. It's honestly surreal to be talking to you about a YA series again, because your series had such an impact on me and truly is one of the reasons why, like, I wrote Light Lark originally 4 years ago, but it's totally different. The only thing that's the same is the name Light Lark and the name of the two main characters. But I truly, a year ago when I was writing it again and I really wanted to write YA, I was looking to books like yours and seeing that, like, the bar is so high. There's like, your work is so, so good. And it's truly, and I think everyone in the chat knows that. And so really it was on me to be like, I don't want to just write something to try to write to trend, which never works, by the way, or anything like that, because your books, even like years after they've been published, there's still, it's not like, oh, it was this trend now that you read back and you're like, oh, amazing. And I was telling you over the phone about a TikTok video that someone made about to like the Ariana Grande in the beginning of the tour, like and it's like a green screen. It's like your picture behind, and someone's like doing like a walk, and it's like Marie Lou like on her way. It's like right, like the defining like best way. So truly, like, oh my gosh, so surreal to be talking to you about Light Lark right now, but. Basically, Light Lark is partially happening because of Book Talk and TikTok. I don't want to get any like misconceptions out there that I just got this book deal based on the video, because I would hate for people watching to be like, oh, all I have to do is like do a TikTok video that goes viral and I can get a book deal. I'm sorry, I wish it was like that, truly. But Light Lark was actually already finished by the time I posted that video, and it was on submission. And so it was at the tail end of submission too, like people had rejected it, and that video went viral, has 1.3 million views, and not only that, but 8,000 comments of people literally commenting like, I'm One Direction in full caps, like, I need this right now. And so the enthusiasm really got me this deal, so thank you everyone from Book Talk. And so it's coming out fall 2022, so a year and a half from now. It's kind of like a rush publication schedule, and I'm gonna have arcs and everything in the fall.
Wow.
So yeah.
So soon.
I want you to read it. But yeah, so it's really fast, and the video kind of outlines the premise of it, but yeah, it happened really quickly, and I think it's going to be a series. I've sold 2 books of it already. Hopefully it's longer, but obviously, like, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's everything about Light Lark. But I'm super excited. It's definitely the best thing I've ever written. I took my time with this book. It took over a year for me to write it, and for me, that's like forever, because I really am so impatient. And so I'm so, so proud of it. And so for this to be my debut YA, for me to be writing YA at all, because I think, like Marie knows, like, YA is so hard to break into, especially now, because there's so many YA books, and it's really hard. So I'm so grateful to be writing it. I'm so excited for Light Lark.
Yay! I am so excited to read it, and I know that everyone is so excited to read it. I know it's going to be everywhere, and it's going to be huge. So that is so great. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. We have time for a couple more questions.
Okay, and speaking of TikTok, Maria's promised me that she's joining TikTok, and so
yes,
yeah.
Thank you so much for your help, Alex.
Yeah, so please, like, maybe if anyone wants to comment like suggestions of like videos, because I know there's a huge fandom. Marie, literally, if you type in her name, she has like over 10 million views already. It's like.
Oh, you guys are the best, and I feel so embarrassed because Alex was so kind to be on the phone with me and explain TikTok, and you were explaining so much, and it was such good information. All I could come up with was like, I think I made an account. Did I do this correctly? And Alex was like, I don't see you. And I'm like, it says I'm user, and I'm like, it says user and like 5 million numbers after it. And Alex is like, that's not right. You didn't. So, I need all the help I get. Okay, so let's see. What genres have you not yet written but would like to?
Oh my gosh, I want to hear you answer this question. I'll answer really quickly that I actually have another deal beyond Light Lark that's new for a different genre. It still is children's, but it's different from anything I've written, and it's not picture books. Like, I don't know how much I could say, but I'd love to write adult too. That was actually my first agent that I got for an adult thriller, and that it didn't sell on submission. So I'd love to like revisit that someday. But I'd love to know, Marie, like if you have any plans to write other genres, and also if you have any deals that you haven't announced yet in different genres.
Oh, an adult thriller! I would love that so much. I would like to write adult sometime too, and I'm working on one, but it's taking a long time just because I'm slotting it in between, my contracted books. But that's so exciting. I want to read yours. I would also, let's see, stuff but there's like a bunch of random stuff that I haven't been able to announce yet that I'm excited about working on. So I have to keep it kind of vague, but I got a new, I'm working on a new project. I'm working on a new project that has been really fun. This has been my pandemic book. So this was the one that I wrote and thought of when I was, when we were all in the throes of pandemicness. And I just was like, I just need something fun. I just need to write something fun that is true escapism for me. And then this book came along, and it has been so fun to work on. And I can't say too much more about it, but that's what I'm working on right now. And I hope it's fun for all of you guys too.
Oh my gosh. I'm sure the internet and the chat's like going wild. And also to like
that was so vague, I'm sorry.
Literally there are like dozens of comments that are like, yes, Marie on TikTok. Please. Like
I'm gonna try my best, guys. Alex, I'm probably gonna be calling you in a panic.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Which scene or section brought you the most joy to write? That's such a good question.
That is such a great question. Would you answer this like for any of your books?
Gosh, let me think. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Sky Hunter then.
Okay.
Sky Hunter is my latest series, and it centers around a girl named Talon who is an elite young warrior. Specifically trained to fight these monsters that have taken over in her world, and this boy named Red, who is from an enemy nation to her. So it's very much, enemies to lovers trope. And there's this scene that I really loved writing in the first book, where the two of them, who have hated each other's guts up until this point, have this kind of romantic moment that they didn't expect to have, and they're in this like bathhouse, and they're not in the same bath. They're just like on opposite ends of the bathhouse. But it was just a really quiet but nice like romantic scene, and I really enjoyed that scene. And my editor likes to tease me a little bit about it, just because she's like, your characters always have to like be bathed and clean before they have like any sort of romantic moment at all. And I'm like, I just need them to be clean. So yeah, I had a really fun time writing that. And there's also this character, this little mouse that Red has. I see it in the comments, and I loved writing Red's pet mouse.
Oh my gosh, I love those scenes so much.
So what about you?
I think for Curse of the Forgotten City, I love the sea. I grew up in Florida. I'm actually in Florida right now because I'm doing I'm trying to visit a lot of bookstores. And so I loved writing all of the sea myths, because I just love like mermaids, but not like the Little Mermaid, like kind of like wicked mermaids and sea creatures and pirates and adventure. And so anything like that, because I feel like also with summer coming up, I'm like craving the ocean. And I live in New York now, so it's been so cold. And so I was also writing it a year ago when it was pretty cold. So I think any of those stories, I have a few favorite stories. Like it's called the Book of Seas instead of the Book of Cuentos for the second book. So I think any of those were just really fun. The stories are kind of like lyrical and a little bit different from like the voice of the rest of the book. And so anything like that, I just kind of liked to do a little bit like poetry type thing. So that was really fun to write.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. So let me see what we've got. Let's see. So there's quite a few questions about advice for aspiring writers, or advice on how to, get your story in front of the right people. So do you have any advice for aspiring writers that you'd like to share?
I definitely do, because I was an aspiring writer for a very long time. I started writing books when I was 12, and I also started querying when I was 12. So I was trying to get an agent for at least 10 years before it actually happened. So my advice would definitely be, if you're, I know like there are probably a lot of like young aspiring writers who might be like below 20. And so my advice would really be you might be really impatient like I was. I literally wanted every single book that I wrote to get published. I could not write them fast enough, and I was very impatient because I just had this dream of being a writer. And I'm really lucky that all of my writings before Chris and I Wish got rejected, because they did not deserve to be published, just because I was so new. I think that it's very rare that someone's first book is good enough to be published. Not only good enough to be published, but good enough for you to look back on it 10 years later and be like, I'm so glad that was my debut. So my advice for very young aspiring writers who are maybe teenagers would be, as impatient as you might be, like your first book is really just learning. I wrote 6 before I got a book deal, and I really hope you don't have to go through that journey, and that maybe your second book or even your first one will get published. But just don't be discouraged, because I got thousands of rejections. Like every single book racked up at least 100 rejections, and some of them were really mean. I said before that like some agent that I don't think is in the business anymore, I don't know who they are, I don't remember their names, I promptly deleted it, said something like, you shouldn't be writing, like something.
Oh God.
I know, horrible, which that didn't happen again. So I really honestly kind of wish I knew who this person was, but I don't. And I cried. Obviously, I was very discouraged. It was really hard to get all of those rejections. I definitely think it gave me a thicker skin, but I wish I hadn't taken it so personally, because publishing is a business, and you truly don't want to go into it without having your best foot forward. And so my advice would be just like, don't be afraid to delete all your words or just kind of shelve your manuscript, because I promise it's just a learning experience. If you're over 20 and you like have been writing for a while, I think just don't give up. I truly believe, just kind of our discussion about fate in the beginning, if this is what you want to do and you love writing more than anything, I believe anyone can do it. I truly do. It might take 10 years, it might take 20 years, it might take millions of words that you end up deleting, it might take 10 books that you wrote and you have to delete. But if you love it, keep going. I would also say, if you're trying to be a writer because you want to get rich or famous or anything, like there are so many better ways maybe to do it, because it just comes with a lot of rejection. Luck plays a factor, and I don't think anyone would want to do this unless you love it, because there are so many highs and lows.
Mm-hmm. That's such good advice, and that's great advice for anyone of any age. And I was very similar. I was super impatient, really wanted to get published at a young age as well. I wrote my first horrible novel when I was 13 or 14, and it was so bad. It went out. I had the gall to send it out on submission too, but it was not meant to be published. And I wrote 5 manuscripts before I wrote Legend. But even for if you are working at it, if you are older and working at it as well, it's like, when you are ready, it will be published. I promise. And Leigh Bardugo, who is one of my favorite authors, especially in YA, was published. Her debut came out when she was in her 30s. There are so many writers out there who succeed at any age. So it is, that was such good advice. Take your time, take what you need. I love that. That was great. And that's just such a great note to end on. I'm so sorry we've run out of time, but you guys were so wonderful. Thank you for being an amazing audience and for all of your wonderful comments and questions. Alex, congratulations again. I am so excited for you and all of the wonderful things that are be coming your way. And I can't wait for Light Lark and all of the future things that you do. So
thank you so much, Marie.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, if anyone wants to buy our books from the link below, we're going to include these really cute book talk stickers. I see a lot of book talk people in the chat. It's like backwards, but it says like Camp Book Talk, Bookish Brew, Book Talk. And so just either Marie or I's books, I hope you'll really support Mysterious Galaxy. We're so grateful to them for hosting. So thank you so much. And thank you, Marie.
Of course. Thank you so much, Mysterious Galaxy. As always, you guys are the best.
No, yeah, it's our pleasure. And just to let everyone know, so Curse of the Night Witch, the paperback, is now available. And for Curse of the Forgotten City, that is just around the corner. So get ready to wish Alex another happy book birthday very, very, very soon. And also, who doesn't want cute swag? Like, how do you say no to that? But thank you so very much, Alex and Marie, for joining us. This event was such a pleasure. I echo the sentiments of not wanting to end, but alas, we are at that time. And go check out our TikTok. Though I am in the same boat as Marie, and TikTok is a foreign land because I am old. So I also
we'll figure this out.
Yeah, call me. We'll do it. We'll do it.
I'm like, you should also give us lessons on TikTok. But we do. I saw someone asking in the comments. We do have a TikTok. So go check out Mysterious Galaxy as well as Marie and Alex on TikTok. Which gives me the last question of, with all the things that both of you have going on, where can people follow you so that they can stay up to date on everything you have going on?
I guess I'm on Instagram at by Alex Aster, on Twitter at by Alex Aster, and on TikTok at Alex.Aster. I love TikTok, obviously. I love Book Talk. I love what it's doing for books. I love that Marie's books are trending on TikTok. I love that Marie's going to be joining TikTok. And I love the enthusiasm. You already have like so many fans on it. So that's where you can find me.
Thank you. I really need to figure out TikTok. Like, I am determined to do this year.
Yes.
I'm going to
we
can do this. Yes, I will definitely take you up on that. I'm going to make my millennial self understand this. Yeah, and you can find me I'm usually on Instagram these days at Marie Lu, the writer, and every now and then on Twitter at Marie_Lu.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Marie and Alex, for joining us. Find us on all the things, everyone, and we will see you next time. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.